When things go horribly wrong, like the destruction of an entire metropolitan city, it isn't because one or two things went wrong, it's because many, many things went terribly wrong. And so naturally there should be a big, all-encompassing investigation to find out what went wrong. Make no mistake, in the opinion of levees.org, the official levee investigation done by the government after Katrina was in many ways a cover-up masquerading as an investigation. Levees.org has maintained all along that the official government investigation, the Interagency Performance Evaluation Task Force, was suspect. 80% of the participants either work for the Corps or her sister agency, Research and Development, U.S. Army Research and Development. Every chapter is either chaired or co-chaired by a Corps employee, and the top 3 directors are all Corps personnel. I ask you, you investigate yourself, what are you going to find? But Corps of Engineers headquarters has maintained all along, with Donald Powell staunchly supporting them, well, yes, but we have the American Society of Civil Engineers in there too, hired by the Corps to do an external peer review so that the public could have confidence in the engineering quality and the independence of the official investigation. But recent information on 2 separate ethics investigations, one on alleged collusion between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the American Society of Civil Engineers, and another external task force looking at the way the American Society does all of its peer reviews, including 9/11, all of this casts an undeniable shadow on the integrity of the IPET. Dr. Ray Seed, in October of this past year, turned in a 42-page ethics complaint describing what he saw as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers hiding their mistakes, intimidating anyone who tried to intervene, and then delaying the final results for 8 months. By then, the American public had turned elsewhere. Can we trust such an evaluation that is controversial? Can we trust an evaluation that is not above reproach? 4 months ago, at a press conference, levees.org cried foul over PowerPoint presentation by the American Society of Civil Engineers that contained as many as 8 or 10 falsehoods, significant omissions, and many misrepresentations. We said then, and we said now, that this is wrong. They look clearly to us like a public relations campaign for the Corps. In a Freedom of Information Act request that we turned in just after our press conference, we found out that Phase 4 of the external peer review, that remember that the Corps paid the American Society of Civil Engineers to do, Phase 4 was to go out and educate the Corps and its constituent community on the lessons learned and what they found in New Orleans. The Corps paid the American Society of Civil Engineers to do this. Well, as we pointed out before, members of the American Society of Civil Engineers have given at least 30 of those PowerPoint presentations to engineering colleges, universities, conferences, both nationwide and abroad. And as we pointed out, they are essentially public relations campaigns for the Corps. It contains significant omissions, misrepresentations, and falsehood. They overstate the strength of the storm, the vulnerability of the region, and the involvement of the locals. Meanwhile, they minimize, and understate the role of the Corps involvement in the flooding. Now,
see that little seal on that car right there? You know what it says? It says Orleans Levee Board. I mean, these guys were driving that every day. These levee boards are also responsible for 30% of the funding. They wanted to cut costs at each step of the way, and that pressure ended up compromising safety.
By saying that there are 7 or 8 levee boards responsible for the hurricane protection system, the listener probably gets the impression of 7 cooks in a kitchen, where in actuality, there's only 1 cook. Everyone else is just a server or a busboy in this equation. The narrator here says one of the problems was the management. He says that there were 7 or 8 levee boards responsible for the hurricane protection system in the New Orleans area. That's untrue. The New Orleans hurricane protection system is the responsibility of the U.S. Army Corps. The levee boards are only responsible to cut the grass and make sure that no one carves up portions of the levee that the designers need to make sure the levee stays safe. That's all. The narrator's presentation, nowhere does it really line up and state to the listener who's in charge and how all these projects came about. No one tells the Corps of Engineers what to do. They are the ones who are the federal government. They are the ones that dictate what the levee boards build, what the levee boards may build, what the levee boards may put across a levee, in a levee, or under a levee. No one does anything regarding a levee or a flood wall or a floodgate without getting permission from the Corps of Engineers. The presenter, as a member and a fellow of the ASCE, has a responsibility to the American public to hold in its highest standard the safety of the public. He also, by being a member of the ASCE, is responsible to make sure he provides public statements that are true and unbiased. Making people laugh about the levee board is just ridiculous. The narrator goes so far as to talk about the fragility or the fragile nature of the levees. Now I want to ask you, did anyone know prior to Katrina that the levees were fragile? I don't think any civil engineer that I have ever met in my life knew that the levees were fragile. For the narrator to tell you, hey, well, you know, the city of New Orleans didn't tell its people how fragile the levees were, makes us sound like we're not paying attention, but in actuality, only a few individuals at the Corps knew that there was anything suspect about the eye wall design. Civil engineers design levees, bridges, and buildings. Does anyone wonder if a bridge is fragile, a building is fragile? It's the same civil engineers.
I want to point out that Tom Jackson, who is a one-time president of the American Society of Civil Engineers and who served on the expert review panel, told the Times-Picayune on November 14th this past year in an interview that the American Society of Civil Engineers was limited in its peer review role by rules placed on it by the Corps. The ERP, the official stamp of approval, should be declared null and void on the basis of this statement alone. And that is exactly what's likely to happen when these 2 ethics investigations that I mentioned earlier are completed at the end of April. Meanwhile, the citizens of this region and this nation deserve an undisputed, non-controversial study that they can trust to make decisions on what to do with their lives and livelihoods. The citizens of this region deserve the 829 Investigation Act, a truly complete, a truly independent, and a truly comprehensive evaluation of what went wrong and why. This investigation, as different from the official federal investigation, will have subpoena power. And there's no need to feel a little depressed or down about this. This is very simple. It's not going to require going back to the levees, doing soil samplings, pulling out sheet piles. All we have to do is take the data already collected from a total of 5 studies done on the levees. One by University of California, Berkeley, one by Louisiana State University, the official IPET, we might as well use the data from that, and 2 other studies done by the insurance industry and by FEMA. You take that data, get people who don't work for the Corps with no stake in the result and who aren't elected officials, get them to look at the data and come up with recommendations that we need to make decisions on what to do. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me and levees.org and Senator Landrieu, and let's all push hard for the 829 Investigation Act. Thank you so much.